Welcome to the New Horizons small group. For this, the first Sunday of June, June the 7th, and the beginning of a new quarter. Last Sunday, May the 31st, we finished up our 6 months in the book of Matthew, and now we're going back to the Old Testament. For the summer quarter, we're going to be looking at the books of Joshua, Judges, and Ruth. These books are historical narratives. They provide a bridge between the ending of the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, and the beginning of the monarchy, which occurs over in 1st and 2nd Samuel and goes through the Kings and Chronicles. Joshua begins with the death of Moses and ends with the death of Joshua. It tells us the story of the Israelites crossing the Jordan River, conquering the land of Canaan, the promised land, and dividing the land up among the 12 tribes. The book itself doesn't tell us who the author of Joshua is. Tradition has named Joshua himself as the author of the book. But just like the book of Deuteronomy, which ends with the death of Moses, Moses could not have written that. And the book of Joshua ends with the death of Joshua, so Joshua couldn't have written that. So in both cases, some other historian has added to the book. Now, Joshua was probably one of the greatest military leaders in the time of the Israelites in ancient culture. He was the one who's going to be the military leader to take them in to conquer the promised land. The name Joshua means Yahweh delivers, or Yahweh is salvation. And most biblical scholars say that the book of Joshua was written sometime after the Torah was written. So sometime after the entrance into the promised land, that whole cycle of the promised land being conquered occurred between about 1406 and 1350 BC. So sometime in that time frame, the book was written, but we don't know exactly where. We do know that the book pretty much divides up into 2 categories, 2 portions. The first 12 chapters, Joshua 1 through 12, tells us about Joshua's conquest of the land. And then from Joshua 13 to Joshua 24, it tells us about how Joshua and the leadership divided the land up among the people, among the different tribes. And it's real important to remember that land was really important to the Israelites. Land was central to their covenant relationship with God. Both the Abrahamic covenant and the covenant made with Moses promised the children of Israel a homeland, a promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey. So land was really, really important to the people. It was a promise. So, promises. 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 We all make them. But what's a promise? Well, as always, when I need a definition, I go to the Merriam-Webster dictionary to look. So that's what I did this time. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines a promise as a declaration that one will do or refrain from doing something specific. So there is an action that I will do, or there is an action that I won't do. And as children, we made promises. We may have crossed our heart and hoped to die, I will do or not do something. More recently, we may have pinky sweared with somebody that we would do or not do something. But we made promises as children. We also make promises as adults. They're called contracts. We make a promise to pay the mortgage on our house. We make a promise to pay our taxes. We make a promise to pay our car bill. We make promises to do all types of things. We make relationship promises. They're called marriage contracts. An old hymn that is still sung today was written by Russell Kelso Carter in 1886. Mr. Carter was a professor at the Pennsylvania Military Academy when he wrote the hymn, Standing on the Promises. Standing on the Promises is a promise. It's a remembrance of the promises God has made and the fact that God always keeps his promises. And we cannot fail, cannot fall if we depend on those promises. So today we're going to look at some promises that God made to Joshua. More importantly, we're going to look at the conditions of those promises. What Joshua had to do in order for those promises to be fulfilled. Because a promise is a contract. And a contract has two parties. Both promise to do something or not do something. So let's look at what the promises are in Joshua chapter 1. We're in Joshua chapter 1. We're going to look at verses 1 to 5. To begin with, we're going to look at the NIV version, and then I'll talk from the Holman CSB version. So Joshua chapter 1, beginning in verse 1 and going to verse 5. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give them. To the Israelites, I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country, to the great sea on the west. No one will be able to stand up against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. So what does the Holman say? Let's start with verse 1. After the death of Moses, the Lord's servant. Notice a couple of things right off the bat. This sets the time frame of this event. After the death of Moses. Now, how long after the death of Moses? We don't know. It could be a couple of days. It could be a month. Or we don't know. Doesn't tell us. But after the death of Moses, who's identified as the Lord's servant, and notice Lord is all caps. This is a word that the Israelites would have used in Hebrew instead of the word Yahweh, which was God's personal name. They wouldn't have used Yahweh because they were afraid of violating the second commandment, taking God's name in vain. So instead they would use Lord, but they would make it all capitals. That would indicate that they're talking about God. So after the death of Moses, who was identified as Yahweh's servant, the Lord Yahweh spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, who had served Moses. So what do we know about Joshua at this point? Well, we know two things. We know first that he's the son of Nun. Nun would be his clan or family that he comes from. And we know that he had been Moses' aide or Moses' servant. Back in the Torah, we find that Joshua was the one who assisted Moses in lots and lots of his endeavors. He followed Moses up on the mountain. He followed Moses to lead the people. He was always there doing something. And the word that's interpreted as served or aid all refers to somebody's work on behalf of somebody else. A slave or servant's work in behalf of a master. So Moses was the important one. Joshua was following him. And Moses was mentoring him. My word, mentoring him. Because he was going to be the one to follow him as the leadership of the Israelites. Verse 2, God speaks, Moses, my servant, is dead. Why is Moses dead? Well, he was old. He's pushing 120 or so at this point. But he's not going to go into the promised land. Why? Well, back in Numbers 20, we find that during the time they're wandering in the wilderness, the Israelites complained, and they complained about everything. And in Numbers 20, they're at a place called Meribah Kadesh, and they're complaining because they don't have enough water. And the Lord tells Moses, speak to the rock, and it will bring forth water. Instead, Moses strikes the rock. Now, why? No idea. Maybe he was exasperated with the people. He was upset about something. He struck the rock instead of speaking to it. And therefore, God said, you have dishonored me, and therefore you're not going to be able to go into the promised land. So Joshua, your aide, is going to be the one to lead the people into the promised land. So God begins with, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now, it's time to do something else. You've grieved about Moses long enough. Now you and all the people prepare to cross over the Jordan to the land I am giving to the Israelites. Moses was not going to be the one who leads the people into the promised land. Joshua was. And it's time to get ready to start to move. Notice that the territory is identified as the land I am giving to them, or the land I am about to give to them. If you'll remember, Joshua, back in Numbers again, was one of the 2 faithful scouts of the 12 that went into the land of promise and scouted it out to see if they could possess it. And they were, along with Caleb, he was one of the 2 that came back and said, we can do it with God's help. The other 10 said, no, they're too big. And because the Israelites did not take God at his word and move in, they wandered for 40 years in the wilderness. But notice now, God says again to them, I'm giving you the land. It's my land, and I can give it to you because I want to give it to you. I made a promise to give it to you. Verse 3, I have given you every place where the sole of your foot treads, just as I promised Moses. God had given the people the land. All the land that they're going to possess is land that they're going to walk over, they're going to take control of. But in order to do that, they have to take action. God has given the land to them, but they have to actually take possession of it. And to do that, they've got to dispossess all of the peoples who currently live in there, in the land, who are idolaters, who worship false gods. Verse 4, God tells them exactly what the land's going to be. Verse 4 says, your territory will be from the wilderness and Lebanon to the great Euphrates River, all the land of the Hittites, and west to the Mediterranean Sea. So what land are we talking about? Well, in both the NIV and the Holman, it says the territory will be from the wilderness to Lebanon. Or in the NIV, it says from the desert to Lebanon. So desert. The southern border of the Promised Land is what today we would call the Negev Desert. So the desert on the southern side of Israel is the southern border. The northern border is Lebanon, where the country of Lebanon is located today. The western border is the Mediterranean Sea. And the eastern border is the Euphrates River, over in what was then Mesopotamia. Now, in the books of Joshua, Judges, and Ruth, as they take possession of the land, not all of that territory was ever possessed by the Israelites until King David and King Solomon. During their reigns, it covered all that land. But prior to that and after that, the land was much, much smaller. And just as today, it's much, much smaller than that area. There are other countries in there. So like east of the Jordan River today is Jordan. That's not part of Israel. So God has given them the outline of the land, and it's the land of the Hittites. And Here, Hittites just is a kind of a synonym for Canaanites. Everybody who lives in Canaan is a Hittite. It's just a synonym. Verse 5, no one will be able to stand against you as long as you live. I will be with you just as I was with Moses. I will not leave you or forsake you. Promises, promises, promises. God makes 3 promises to Joshua here. He has commanded Joshua to lead the people into the promised land. He's given Joshua the boundaries of the promised land. And now he makes 3 promises to Joshua. First promise, no one will be able to stand against you as long as you live. God is going to be with him just like he was with Moses from that day forward to the day Joshua dies. Promise 1. Promise 2, I will be with you just as I was with Moses. Just as I was with Moses. Just as I spoke through Moses, just as I gave Moses commands and instruction on what to do and enabled him to do it, I will do the exact same thing with you. Promise 3, I will not leave you or forsake you. I'm never going away. I'm always going to be at your side, bringing you forward until the land is conquered. Now, God's presence with Joshua would have assured that the conquest would go as expected. But it's a contract. Those are God's promises. I'm giving you the land. Here are the boundaries. I will be with you just like I was with Moses. I'll never leave you. But Joshua has to do something. So verses 6 to 11 tells us what Joshua's side of the contract is. Chapter 1, verses 6 to 11. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Do not let this book of the law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Holman says, be strong and courageous, for I will distribute the land I swore to your fathers to give them as an inheritance. The word in Hebrew that is used to talk about strong and courageous is generally used in a military context. In other words, to be able to do what needs to be done, Joshua needs to be bold. He needs to take action. He needs to depend on God to fulfill his end of the bargain, and he needs to move out and take the land in a military context. The mandate here of be strong and courageous not only appears here in verse 6, but it appears in verse 7, verse 9, and at the very end of the chapter at verse 18. The repetition means this is a completed action. You need to be strong and courageous. You need to be the military leader and lead the people in and take the land, because I have promised to give it to them. Now go possess it. Verse 7, above all, be strong and very courageous to, notice, carefully observe the whole instruction my servant Moses commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or the left, so that you will have success wherever you go. Here's Joshua's part of the bargain, his side of the contract. God's going to give them the land. Joshua needs to be a strong and courageous military commander and lead the army in and take the land. But more importantly, he needs to follow everything that God gave to the people in the way of commands through Moses. When it talks about the instruction or the law, the word there is Torah, which refers back to the first 5 books of the Bible, the books that Moses wrote. God says, you will follow my laws and you will be successful. Don't turn to the right or to the left. Stay on a straight line and you will be successful wherever you go. Now, the word that's translated out of Hebrew for success or prosperous later on does not refer to financial success. It refers to wisdom. It refers to being able to think clearly. In many cases, it refers to military campaign. It means you will accomplish what you have set out to do with my help if you follow the laws I have given through Moses. Verse 8, this book of instruction must not depart from your mouth. You are to recite it day and night, so that you may carefully observe everything written in it. Then you will prosper and succeed in whatever you do. In the NIV, it says you are to meditate on it day and night. In the Holman, it says you are to recite it day and night. The Hebrew word that's translated in both places basically means to mutter. Well, usually we think of muttering as being discouraged or being upset with something, so we mutter. But what God is telling the Israelites and Joshua here is they are to continually speak the Lord's words. They are to speak the instructions, they are to speak the laws, the rules that God gave through Moses, and meditate on it. Listen to what they are saying. And we know that later they would put them in boxes and put them on the door frames of their houses or put them on tassels around their head. But they were to keep God's word foremost in line, to keep it in a right perspective on everything that's going on. And notice they are to do it day and night. It's not just something you do once or one time during the day. It's something you are to think about all day. It should be the guiding light that leads you forward into everything that you do in life. And it says, be careful to observe. The word here for observe is to do more than just look at it. The word observe, just like the word that is translated listen, means to take action on it, to do something with it. Verse 9, haven't I commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Again, the word that is interpreted here or translated here as discouraged refers to a military situation. Military situation, discouraged means where the leadership or the soldiers have lost hope. They have felt like that there's no way they can win the battle. Their courage has failed. So God is telling Joshua, don't lose hope. Don't get discouraged. You are going to win. Verses 10 and 11. Then Joshua commanded the officers of the people. Now, these were probably not the military officers. These were probably the administrative leadership in the clans and tribes. Joshua commanded the officers of the people, go through the camp and tell the people, get provisions ready for yourself, for in 3 days you will be crossing the Jordan to go in and take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving you to inherit. So these officials would go through the camps and tell them to get ready to gather up all the provisions, the food, the materials that you need to take with us, because we're crossing the Jordan and we're going in to take the land that God has promised us. Now, beginning in verse 13, 12 and 13, and going through verse 15, we find a little bit of an interlude, because at this point, Joshua speaks to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. And just to refresh your memory, these are the 3 tribes, Reuben, Gad, and half-tribe of Manasseh, who asked Moses earlier to let them settle on the east side of the Jordan River. Their flocks were huge. The east side was a great place for flocks to dwell. They wanted to have their inheritance there. And Moses said, okay, you can do that. But you have to also come in on the west side of the Jordan River into the main area of the land of Canaan and help your brothers take possession of the land. And Gad and Reuben and Manasseh all agreed to do that. So now in verses 13 to 15, Joshua is reminding them of the promise, there's that promise again, of the promise that they would do just that. So let's look at 16 to 18. Then they answered Joshua, whatever you have commanded us we will do, and wherever you send us we will go. Just as we fully obeyed Moses, so we will obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Whoever rebels against your word and does not obey your words, whatever you may command them, will be put to death. Only be strong and courageous. So in the Holman, verse 16 says, they answered Joshua, everything you have commanded us we will do, and everywhere you send us we will go. So they affirmed their commitment. The commitment that they gave to Moses, they affirmed it to Joshua that they would go into the promised land and assist their brothers in taking the land. Probably they were speaking for all of the rest of the tribes of Israel as well, because they knew that God had appointed Joshua to be Moses' successor, and they were willing to follow him. Notice verse 17. We will obey you just as we obeyed Moses in everything. That sounds great. But remember, they didn't do a really good job of obeying Moses. Remember the golden calf? Remember the grumbling about the food and the water? Remember the grumbling about we're not there yet? They didn't do a really good job about obeying Moses. But the promise here, we take it in the right attitude. We will obey you just as we obeyed Moses in everything, would be that they will do what you asked us to do. And may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Anyone who rebels against your order and does not obey your words and all that you command him will be put to death. Above all, be strong and courageous. They were about to go into a long military campaign. A military campaign that was to take possession of all the land of Canaan. They needed to have complete discipline within the military, in the ranks. They had to do what the commanders said and to do it then. Now, even taking this city of Jericho, we know that one Israelite disobeyed God and it caused issues later. So what they're saying here is, if anyone doesn't do what God commands through you, we will put him to death. That Israelite who disobeyed God in the taking of Jericho, in fact, was put to death. Notice verse 18 concludes with a reiteration of God's words to to Joshua. Be strong and courageous. So throughout here, it says, be strong and courageous. Not in your own might, but in the might that God gives you. God has made the covenant. He has promised to give us the land. All we have to do is possess it. But we have to take action too. We have to act on God's promises. Go back to that hymn. Promises, standing on the promises. We can stand and know that God's promise is rock solid. We know that what he promises, he will do. Let's close with prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the lesson today. We thank you that you do have a rock solid promise that we can trust you in all things. We can trust you now and into eternity. May we rest on those promises. For we ask it in your name. Amen.